indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call, please.
Mayor Bain,
Here?
Councillor Becker,
Here.
Councillor Lundstrom, Councillor Sherman.
Okay, we've all had a chance to look at the minutes for the regular meeting of June 10th. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second.
Second motion?
Okay, second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the motions are approved, our minutes are approved. We don't have visitors and delegations. Would anyone like to publicly comment tonight? Chuck?
Thank you. Chuck Miller, 26060 Morgan County Road, Asbrush, Colorado. I'd like to take the opportunity to share with you that it's been brought to my attention that the FEMA rules and regulations that you adopted last year at this time have not been properly funded, that there's been claims turned in and they've been denied anything because they do not have the funding. So you are still carrying out an unfunded mandate that FEMA has put out. At the time we were discussing that, I also brought to your attention by adopting FEMA rules and regulations, it could put the city in jeopardy as to further action by property owners versus property right takings. And I'd like to share with you a simple email that came from the National Association of Realtors today. It says Supreme Court ruling stands to strengthen private property rights. On Friday, the Supreme Court issued a ruling in the case of Nick versus Township of Scott, a decision which will lead to state and local governments to be more thoughtful and deliberate when developing laws or regulations that could infringe on American private property rights. Specifically, Nick versus Township of Scott declared that plaintiffs who have accused local governments of violating the Takings Clause of the U.S. Constitution may proceed directly in federal court rather than first litigating in local circuits, overturning a 34-year-old precedent set in 1985 by the Supreme Court. A property owner has an actionable Fifth Amendment takings claim when the government takes his property without paying for it, the court opinion reads. The Fifth Amendment right to full compensation arises at the time of taking, regardless of the post-taking remedies that may be available to the property owner. In sum, because the takings without compensation violates the self-executing Fifth Amendment at the time of the taking, the property owner can bring a federal suit at that time. So it goes on to say that this probably will draw the attention to cities and counties when they start looking at adopting rules and regulations. Predominantly what I'm reversing it back to is what you did with FEMA, because it does make you liable for takings because you adopted the rule. Leaves FEMA plumb out of it. So I just thought I'd share that with you to support what I told you back when we discussed that. So you can go ahead and research that further to see if they're funded, and also I'm sure you can find the court case, or your staff can find the court case on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Anyone else? Okay, moving on to management number 5. We have a public hearing for an application by JTS Properties LLC for a special use permit to construct a duplex on residential low-density zone at 805 Bob Boulevard, Brush, Colorado. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time, and we'll hear a staff report by Tyler Purvis.
Good, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Before you is your packets that I'm going to go through here for the special use permit for JTS Properties. They request a permit for the construction of a single-story duplex on a property in a residential low-density zone, which is currently prohibited according to our land use. The subject property is a 0.3 acre or 13,000 square foot vacant lot that has an address of 805 Bob Boulevard. It's known to be right on the corner of Mill Street and Bob Boulevard, the northeast corner. Attached to the report is an area location map, the applicant's request, associated site plans and rendering, and the property deed. Consistent with the requirements of the city's land use code, notice of this land use was put out. The review criteria in section 16620A of the land use code identifies a special use as a use which the city council finds is essentially desirable to the community, but the indiscriminate allowance of which within a district could cause traffic congestion, noise, and general deleterious effects on the value, safety, or health of the community. Therefore, the City Council considers each special use on an individual basis with emphasis on the conditions of the specific site and its environs, and adequate and sufficient safeguards to lessen the impact of the use. Section 16620C states that when reviewing a special use permit application, the city council shall consider the following, and there's three of them, A, B, and C. A, the compatibility of the use with adjacent uses and adjacent zone districts as applicable, including the use's potential traffic congestion, noise, lighting, parking requirements, and general deleterious effects on such adjacent uses and properties. B, conformance with the comprehensive plan, and C, the applicant's history of zoning compliance within the city. The intent of the current zoning district, residential low density, it provides the following regard as to the purpose, which is to identify and zone land for predominantly single-family use. The discussion at which we're speaking about tonight, or for which we're speaking, the location and background, the 0.3 acre subject parcel located at 805 Bob Boulevard is Lot 35 of the Bunker Hill Estate subdivision that was established in 1972, currently zoned residential low density. Neighboring properties for the parcel consist of residential low density to the north, east, and vacant land to the south, and a residential mobile home park to the west. A duplex was previously located on the site but was destroyed by a house fire in 2010 and subsequently demolished and has sat vacant since then. The exact reason for the zoning incompatibility with the previous duplex is unknown, but it's likely that the residential low-density zoning district was given to the area at a later date and the structure was grandfathered in as a legal non-conforming use. So the proposal, the applicant seeks to build a single-story duplex on the property which would be sold as a single unit or rented individually. Within your packets is a layout of the site itself as well as the structure itself, some drawings of that. The units would be approximately 1,500 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, no basement. Driveway access is to be at existing curb cut on Bob Boulevard. The total footprint of the building is approximately 3,944 square feet, with the remainder of the lot landscape. There will be a 25-foot setback from Bob Boulevard, which meets the 20-foot minimum requirement, a 20-foot setback from Mill Street, which meets the minimum 20-foot requirements, 25 feet to the east property line, which meets the minimum 15-foot requirement, and 12 feet to the north property line, which meets the minimum 5-foot requirement. As far as citizen comments, to date, no comments have been received regarding this proposal. For our criteria review, the compatibility, the current zoning district does not specify use for multifamily dwelling units, which are typically constructed in residential medium density and residential medium high density districts. But given the historical use of the property, being the previous duplex, and its proximity to the residential mobile home, and that the zoning district for Beaver Valley Elementary School, which is catty-corner to the property, is residential medium district. It's used for the construction of a duplex. Is not out of character with the surrounding land uses. The following list of relevant goals, policies, and strategies from the city's current comprehensive plan do align with this. Policy 5.2, promote high-quality new residential neighborhoods which are livable, safe, and are an asset to the city. Goal 6, promote the construction of new housing in Brush to accommodate growth and better meet the demand for housing in the city. Goal 7, achieve a mix of housing types and densities in order to meet the diverse needs of the citizens. And as far as the applicant's compliance history, to date the applicant has made good efforts to comply with city regulations and standards and has made significant investments in the Brush community and has no history of zoning violations within the city. So our conclusion and recommendation: should council find that the proposal has met the review criteria, staff recommends that the council grant a special use permit for the construction of a single-story duplex on the subject property in a residential low-density zone. With the following conditions, any stormwater concerns are addressed to the satisfaction of the Public Works Director, and primary vehicle access to the property does remain on Bob Boulevard. Any questions?
Is there a fence in the back that's separate? There's another house right to the back, right? Another,
To the back, you're on
to
Mills,
the,
to
to
the
the,
north.
to the east.
to the east there,
This is gonna face Bob Boulevard.
correct.
So to behind it would be to the east, and
Yeah.
there's existing apartments or something there.
Apartments.
Is there already an existing fence, privacy fence or anything like that?
I looked at Google Maps and I think there was a privacy fence there. I'm sure the applicant could speak to that for certain. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
And at this time, we give the opportunity to the applicant to speak if you'd like.
I can address that, the fence issue.
Okay,
There is a partial falling down fence in between
that's what I,
that property and the property to the east is like a 3 or 4 unit apartment,
Mhm.
a 2-story apartment. And then to the north is a single family home and there's a fence in between there. My plan is to put a new privacy fence in between both the new unit and the one to the east, so.
council have any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, I go ahead and open the public hearing up to any public comment on this. Okay, are there any other council questions or concerns, discussion?
It looks like a good use of that lot.
Is that the property that burned down several years ago?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought. Okay, if there are no other questions, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and entertain a motion to either approve or deny the application.
I move we approve the application for the special use permit.
Second.
Okay, that was with the 2 conditions staff identified?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Andrew, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Bain,
Yes.
Counselor Becker,
Yes.
Counselor Lundstrom.
Yes.
Counselor Sherman. Yes.
Okay, moving on to 5B, resolution number for a special use permit on behalf of TCA. This is a special use permit request that was approved at our last meeting, and staff has prepared and has in front of us a resolution for consideration. Yeah, the first one is TCA Microgrid Energy LLC.
Okay.
And you weren't wanting a staff report, you were just needing approval for the resolution?
Right, I'm looking for approval for the resolution.
I move we approve resolution number 2019-5.
Okay, we have a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion? Andrew, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Bain,
Yes.
Counselor Becker,
Yes.
Counselor Lundstrom.
Yes.
Counselor Sherman. Yes.
Okay, on 5C, same thing for this resolution. It was a request that we approved at the last meeting, and we have in front of us the resolution for that. So rather than go through a staff report, it's pretty fresh in everyone's memory. I look for a motion to either approve or deny the resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2019-6.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Andrew, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Bain,
Yes.
Counselor Becker,
Yes.
Counselor Lundstrom.
Yes.
Counselor Sherman. Yes.
Okay, 5D, we were gonna give direction to staff on the emergency siren, but we're missing 3 members, so I think it's important that we table this item until we have a full council. So we'll move on to finance.
I move we approve the city expenditures for June 10th through June 24th, 2019, in the amount of $358,997.04.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Bain,
Yes.
Counselor Becker,
Yes.
Counselor Lundstrom.
Yes.
Counselor Sherman. Yes.
Okay, moving on to 6B, finance.
I move we approve the amended payroll from May 30th. It previously was incorrectly reported at $71,511.38. The correction is $77,368.71.
Okay, we have a motion approved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Bain,
Yes.
Counselor Becker,
Yes.
Counselor Lundstrom.
Yes.
Counselor Sherman. Yes.
Okay, moving on to staff report. Well, Dana?
I'm good. He's gonna get a hotel, so.
Oh, okay, okay. Moving on to staff reports, Police Chief Derek. Mr. Boss.
Good evening. Just a couple things briefly. Working with our human resources folks, Loranda, we identified a small issue that we had with overtime and vacation time, and comes down to we were not appropriately paying everybody for their overtime. So we rectified that, but I just want to give you a heads up because I probably will go over budget on my overtime because of that little fix and that little change that took place earlier last week that we identified that. But
Now, I
in
heard
short,
this was a problem in Fort Morgan. I hadn't heard this was a problem.
I don't think we had nearly the issue that
Okay.
Fort Morgan had.
Okay.
In short, what we were doing, and this began several years ago, instead of paying overtime, we were giving guys vacation time, kind of in lieu of overtime, if they had vacation in the same pay period that they earned overtime. So I don't understand 100% of the ins and outs of that, other than we can't do that.
Okay,
So rather than give them back vacation time, we're paying the overtime now.
Okay.
So,
all right.
I don't think this will be nearly the issue that Fort Morgan's been battling. Theirs was much more significant and deeply rooted.
Okay.
So this is not to that scale, but I do want to bring it to your attention.
Okay.
So, having said that, 10 days ago, we had an officer-involved shooting. Everybody's okay. I'm very happy about that. We have an outstanding department. The response there was second to none. Very literally, every officer in this department showed up, except for our trainee and our code enforcement officer. They did just a fabulous job. I can't get into a lot of details. It still is under investigation, but the officers are back to work. They took 4 days of administrative leave, and everybody's doing well. So incident ended well, and again, just you have a phenomenal police department, so it's a privilege to lead them. And then last, I'll let Matt talk about this a little more, but we have a parade float in the 4th of July parade, and we need people on it. So if you guys would like to do that, he has more information on it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on, community development, Tyler?
Thank you, Mayor. Just, I guess, recapping this past week, excuse me. I had the, am I good?
Sorry.
All right. So, the last week I had the opportunity, along with a couple other staff members, to head up to Breckenridge for the CML, Colorado Municipal League Conference, and it was a very, very beneficial. The content there applied to a lot of different aspects of course, city overall, but specifically my role at the city, from insurance to land use to a lot of working with businesses and just different mechanisms and funding mechanisms that are available for communities, specifically small communities. As a rural community, of course, we face a lot of different challenges that urban areas are I think a lot of times oblivious to, and because of that we can become overlooked because a lot of different policymakers, a lot of attention is on the larger urban areas. And so seeing the different tools that are available to us as a community and things that we can bring to some of the different organizations that we're tied with out here is very, very beneficial. So look forward to implementing some of these different things that I acquired this past week, and I thank council for putting in the budget the allowance for me to be able to go there. So thank you.
Thank you. Best and brightest, Matt.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thanks very much. I too got the opportunity to attend the CML conference, and man, it was a whirlwind. I won't give you guys the 2-hour-long presentation I put together before this, but I'll give the abridged version. There's a ton of new information, a bunch of great networking opportunities for me. I was able to finally meet all of the other best and brightest interns in one area, which is great, to see what other people are working on in other communities. And like Tyler, to echo some of his thoughts, there's just a lot of great little nuggets that I think I brought back with me to hopefully improve the city, but also my work with the chamber as well. One of the highlights that I wanted to share was running into the Main Street coordinator, Gail. I forget her last name. I probably should. You know what? Langley. She had seen some of my work for the Central School Crusaders and trying to redevelop Central School, and she's been passing that out to a ton of developers. So there's a lot of good work coming from that direction. So thank you again for, I guess, putting it in the budget. Is that how you worded it? That sounds good. I was going to say for paying for me to go, but it doesn't sound as nice. For putting it in the budget for allowing me to go, because it truly was a great experience. The second thing was, Chief brought it up a little bit. We have been in charge of the party committee. Chief's a party guy. So that encompasses designing and decorating the parade float. So if you're bored, on Wednesday at 9 o'clock, we're going to be decorating the parade float over at the utilities building. I believe it's utilities, yeah? Yeah. Close enough. In one of the garages, we got a trailer with a bunch of decorations and such, so please come out and help with that. Right now, there's only a few of us doing it, but we'd always welcome the help. And then also, we desperately need people to be on the float. So if you're not doing much on the 4th of July, come hop on the float and shoot some squirt guns and have some fun. But that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. City Clerk Andrea.
Your various activities that you can participate are on your calendar that are in the packet. And just a reminder that in August, we will be able to circulate nomination petitions for city council's members in wards 1, 2, and 3. So put the word out there that that will be on the horizon.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, City Administrator, Lonnie.
Okay, just a few items. Also want to just put in a plug for CML and the conference that they put on for municipal staff and elected officials. Did a great job this year. And a few things that we're able to accomplish up there were some important meetings that we always try and partake of. And some of those were with Xcel Energy. Xcel Energy is our we have a franchise agreement with them for electricity and gas here in the city. And we also have a franchise agreement that years ago we went through a quality of service proceedings, I believe is what it was called. But that was essentially a large case where a lot of communities got together that had some concerns with Xcel Energy. Some of those were cleared up by just conversation, but a lot of it through the process using, I think it was Ken Feldman back then, I can't remember for sure, but we had some outside help working on that proceedings, and they fixed a lot of those things. And a lot of the other information that we got back from them was just more updates of what they're doing in the area, the city's 1% underground fund, how much funding was still there available for us to utilize. Some of their thoughts on the Pawnee Power Plant, how long that's going to be around. So we had a lot of really good discussion with them. Our 15-minute meeting ended up being an hour and 15 minutes, but we had a great discussion with them. Also, Charter Spectrum, who is another franchise agreement holder in the community for internet and cable. We had a lot of I had a long discussion with them about things that they're working on and a lot of their upgrades that they're looking at doing in the community that they've already done, and they're looking forward to doing some more. So some good discussions there. A few things just to note that some of you might receive in the mail information from CML. They've got new annexation books for understanding annexation, and I didn't bring the other one with me, but it was a book from CIRSA, and it is a new book in regards to public or elected officials and your legal liabilities. So they had one out, but every so many years they do updates, and so that new one is out. And we had a really interesting presentation on Tuesday morning in regards to First Amendment auditors, and that's essentially what we've dealt with in the past of people coming in, videotaping council, taunting police officers, things like that. They call them First Amendment auditors. And so they talked about that as across the country you're seeing a lot more of that. And so great presentation that they did there, and I know that the mayor, that's one of the things that he wanted to focus on is some of that education. So between CML and CIRSA, they're really trying to educate public entities in regards to that. There's also Department of Local Affairs, a very strong presence of DOLA at the conference, and they had a breakout session as well as they joined with other entities and did some education there as well. And a lot of it was about the grants and things that they have available to us. And no sooner than we went through that discussion, we got an email, and I forwarded it to some of the council members, maybe all, But essentially, that's a ready grant that city staff put together, and we received $118,000 of grant funds to put towards the Brush Agri Park, new subdivision we have out here at the feedlot, and that's to extend water lines out there. So we had extended water lines to a certain point. The Colorado land processors, they're wrapping it around through. This is gonna complete the loop and create some additional lots out there for businesses. So it's one more step in the right direction for help with economic development. And that's all I have.
Okay, are there any other mayor and council reports?
Yeah, something. I've talked to a few people who are concerned with the trucks coming through town early in the morning about the engine brakes. On the west side of town, we have something posted, west side of town, that they're required, but nothing on the east side. I was wondering if there's a possibility that we used to have a time where they, like from 7 PM to so AM, where we don't allow them in town at all. If you're going 35 miles an hour through brush, then most, you don't need to get the jig brakes on. And it's on our side of town that, we've got the complaints about it, you know.
And traffic's only gonna increase, so
Right.
we'll, get with the chief and for a few on that.
To answer some of that real quick, the signs that say engine muffler required are put up by the state. And that is state law everywhere. They just put that up as a reminder for truckers as they come into town. But it doesn't really do anything to alleviate the use or the sound, because they have to have it, it's still loud. We don't have an ordinance that specifically prohibits the use of engine braking in town. There is one sign on Hospital Road that says per city ordinance, you can't use engine braking. I don't know the history on that sign. I don't know where it even comes from, but we don't have an ordinance that supports that. So, my opinion would be it would be worth looking into and drafting an ordinance that just restricts engine braking in town.
Could that be, now, because 34 is a state highway, would we be prohibited from enforcing it on that highway, or can we
No.
enforce it there?
We could enforce it there.
We
I
can.
believe so.
Down in Yuma has those signs up.
Okay.
There's a little bit of room to-
Oh, all the way down 34, okay.
So the
Okay.
state basically allows us, the authority, if you will, to do enforcement action through town. So city ordinances, all of that applies.
Okay. So maybe we-
We'll do a little homework and then we'll, if it looks like the ordinance is way to go, we'll get a draft together.
Put it on a work session. Okay. Thank you, Larry. Anything else?
Are we gonna, do you want me to
Yeah,
do that?
CML, if you would.
I also got to go to CML. Yeah, that was my first time going, and it was amazing. I seemed to follow Matt around and kept seeing him in all the classes I was in, but there was stuff on recreation and parks and trails, and there was a couple I was a little disappointed in, because I felt like they were just trying to sell us their services, and they had good services, but I did have a good conversation with Allison from Fort Morgan about and a gal from Akron about maybe working together and doing something like that with the three communities. So she said Fort Morgan has plenty of money, they could pay for it, so. But, oh, this is being recorded. But, yeah, it was good. And so, yes, thank you for sending me as well.
Right, thank you. I'd just like to say probably the best class I went to was the annexation class. And it helped because annexations are so technical in nature, but they're so important to economic development that I think it's good for us all to learn exactly how you go about annexation, the process. This class was geared more for the lawyers, probably they may be the elected officials, but it kind of gave you the timing that is important to hit these timelines and stuff like that to go through, you don't have problems. I did discuss with Kevin Baumer, the new president of CML, about 6 months ago, the need for CIRSA to deal with First Amendment auditors. As the problem that we dealt with a couple of years ago is it's only expanded, it's happening all over the Front Range, and I've made it my goal to let other small town communities and mayors know what's happening and how you have to deal with it so you don't get into trouble. And what happened to us, we can prevent that with training, not only city staff, but police officers, They go after those people a lot. And true to his word, he had a class that Monty went to, and then I went to a class on Thursday that dealt with the same thing. And Kevin emailed me after I got home on Friday saying that they did that, and they also plan on working with Tammy Tenoy to provide training for city attorneys to let them know about this, so they're better acclimated. Because it's not something that's been happening for a long period of time, but it's something we all need to know to protect ourselves, so it was good. Number 9, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Okay, we're adjourned, and we'll start our work session right away.